I sat down with Martin Casas. Martin is a fellow cis, middle-aged, married, white guy that's a dad and also graying at a rapid pace. We talked about the recent election, the devolving landscape of news and facts, and a number of 10,000-foot view theories, some obvious, others concepts of theories, as to why Donald Trump won. As a fellow small business owner in the city of St. Louis, we also talk about the power structure here in the 314 and the struggles that come along with wanting to grow, expand, and invest in the city. While we didn't solve any actual problems, we were, at least I felt we were, honest with ourselves, the results, and the problems associated with the team we were pulling for to win. Please subscribe and review to help feed the ego, and let's go. Do me a favor to pronounce your last name.
Casas, like mi casa
Casas.
es su casa, but two houses.
Casas.
Yeah.
All right, now I got it.
So I'm second generation American.
Second generation American.
Until all the bad stuff came out, like I always used to compare myself to Louis C.K. because like Louis C.K. is also half Mexican.
Yeah.
And so he and I kind of like look, we have like the big foreheads, we're balding, kind of chubby looking.
I would have
guys.
guessed Irish.
Yeah. Louis C.K. or me?
Both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got some English on my mom's side. So, yeah, a little bit. Him, especially because the red hair.
Yeah, that'll do it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Well, but I think based on the salt and pepper, you seem to be a little bit more in my
Haggard?
my generational camp.
Yeah.
So where the early influence of our natural color
Yeah.
is a little bit more noticeable. No, it's not as noticeable.
Yeah, I went gray kind of early. I think when I first started seeing grays pop up in my 20s.
Was it because you were deeper into politics at that point, or was
Stressed out all the time?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably. Could have been. Yeah.
that's what usually does it, right?
Yeah.
Some form of stress.
Well, dude, I used to say, because I had this my comic shop for the last 6 years, and when I have photos of like the first day we opened, I have a brown beard. And now it's white.
Yeah, so small business owner in a cool neighborhood.
Yeah.
That requires a lot of help internally and externally. Are you saying that might have pushed?
What do you mean by a lot of help? Like I just need like,
Yeah, I mean, meaning when you're
deal with employees.
when you're a frontier community with cool shit,
Oh yeah.
the frontier is usually, yeah, we want you, but do we really want you, or are we really going to support you?
Yeah.
Because I remember when Mike did that, because Mike Lodak was a good friend of mine. He was
Yeah.
a neighbor.
Yeah.
I was the contractor on the building foam.
Oh really?
So I remember when we were building it originally with little to no budget,
Yeah.
and all the storefront was gone, and the Cherokee regulars at that time
Yeah.
were not the regulars that you see now.
Sure.
And they would all be walking by like, what the hell are you guys doing?
And what year was this? Like 2003?
You ever early 2000s,
Yeah.
mid to 405, somewhere in there? And I remember he was like, well, he was the first one with the liquor license on that side, if you recall.
Is that right?
Yeah, the neighborhood on the other side of Jefferson, it was good. But on that side,
Antique Row.
correct.
Okay, yeah.
Craig Schmidt.
I know Craig Schmidt, yeah.
Yeah, he was the anti-liquor czar
Uh-huh. Had a
/
moratorium.
alderman. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, point being, when you do things in cool neighborhoods that are new cool, it's tougher than whenever it's established cool.
Right.
But it also is cheaper. So then risk reward.
Well, it's one of the reasons why Midwest towns have so many entrepreneurs in them, because it's cheaper to get started.
Yep.
So when I first moved to St. Louis in 2005, I moved from Washington, D.C., and but I'm from Southern California originally. So I thought that's just how expensive things were. Right? like I had a 700 square foot apartment in D.C. and it was like $1,400 a month. My wife and
In 2000.
2005.
Okay.
Yeah, 2003, 2005. And come here and we have a 3-bedroom house for $700. Like, nuts. But I started a business called Front Yard Features where we did outdoor movies. So we had like inflatable movie screens. And I started off with zero money. I just as we grew and I got jobs, I used it to buy the equipment.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that in California or in Washington, D.C. because you'd need an office, you need a car, you need all the stuff. But in St. Louis, it was the startup is so much easier. The hill to climb is a lot.
I mean, it really is one of those like weird anomalies, or just like what the fuck isms, for lack of a better term, as to why that doesn't happen more. Like really creative ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of people. I have friends that have been embedded in that Silicon Valley mindset world specifically, not only on the West Coast, but Austin, even Nashville here the last 5-10 years. It has its own, I use Silicon Valley loosely, but any area that is like popping off on startups, creativity, etc., the usual suspects. And then when you look at St. Louis, really take your pick, any Midwest city.
Yeah.
Just for cost alone.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have the institutions.
Well, dude, that's what Arch Grants is doing. Arch Grants is attracting entrepreneurs around the country.
Yeah.
The cost of living here is cheap. Barrier of entry is so much lower. But it's starting a business isn't for everybody. I was watching Shark Tank, and there was this episode where one of the sharks was like, "So what do you mean this isn't your full-time job? This is your dream, right?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, man, this is my dream to make this little bullshit thing I'm selling." And the shark goes, "Well, I can't invest in you if you're not 100% invested." He's like, "Dude, I am. I've got to work all day and at nighttime." But he's like, "Why do you have a daytime job?" So he's like, "Well, because I have 3 kids." He's like, "I had 4 kids when I started a business." The guy's like, "Fuck, what do you want me to? I can't. Yeah, I can't give up my. Still got to pay my bills." Like that is something that I think people really forget, and which is lost in the rush to become millennial millionaires online, is that it is not easy to start a business. You trade your 9 to 5 and you go from 24/7, and it's fucking hard to do. Like that's one of the reasons why I'm back getting out of the comic book store business, is because I started there when my daughter was 8, and now she's a freshman in high school. And think about all those hours I missed, all the money I dumped into, I'm not gonna be able to get back. The time I spent, like, it's a big commitment. But if you have a city like St. Louis, where what I love about this town is that it's a city where you don't really need to ask for permission. As long as you get forgiveness from it afterward, you'll be fucking great.
I mean, it is.
And I'll tell you a story about that after your point.
Well, no, I mean, it's one of those towns that, for example, if we go down the 44 corridor right off of Kings Highway, that particular district, if you are a small business owner and you want to do anything, the easiest way to get it done or ask for forgiveness is go to Milo's, buy a pizza and a pitcher of beer.
Right.
Like the idea of these like Hollywood solutions to real world issues still happen here.
Vollmer may be the last of that era. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else is around. Honestly, I don't know a lot of these new aldermen.
No, neither do I. And a big part of that is, something I want to talk about a little bit later is messaging. Like, they're kind of, and some will listen to this, no disrespect, they're a little faceless. There's no, like, Vollmer was a character.
Yeah.
Like, you can cast him.
Look at another guy, Joe Vaccaro. I can't speak to his politics, but he was a guy where you could call him. Yeah. And then he would go knock on the door and be like, "Hey, man, your house party is too loud."
Car Wash Joe.
Car Wash Daddy. That was the license plate, Car Wash Daddy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Hey,
those retail politicians are kind of like, don't really exist anymore.
No, not at all.
No.
And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe we need more of them. Because if we're going to make America great again, is that part of it? Do we miss those guys, girls, et cetera, that are...
I mean, I think part of the appeal of Donald Trump is that he is a guy that will get a deal done. At least that's the perception of him, even though it's complete bullshit. So I think that there's something about that is appealing. Although what we really forget about when we talk about this and we idolize these kind of like politicians is that that's where corruption comes into place. And that's where like things like Tammany Hall and the old school St. Louis, where have the committeeman who used to be extremely powerful in St. Louis, where if you wanted a job, you'd go to the committeeman and they would dole out jobs at City Hall. And the alderman's job was just like to pass the laws, and he would do the fundraising and all that.
Yeah.
But there was a whole system in place, but it had to get replaced because there was a lot of corruption. Now, so you run in the risk of, you want someone to get something done, but they got to do it equitably and legally. And then
I think that's part of it. Like we not we as in me and the DNC or Democratic Party in general, because that's who we're referencing here as far as like comparing, contrasting to.
Oh, we're moving out of St. Louis now. Now we're talking national.
Well, no. I'm applying it to St. Louis because even within St. Louis, where you do not have legitimate party competition within our district. In fact, episode 1, guest 1, Robert Vroman.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I joke.
The Republican.
The one,
Yeah,
right? And I joked with friends, and they're like, who is he? I don't know, I said, well, it's because you only pay attention to primaries in this town, because whoever wins the primary is going to win. And then here comes the general, and everybody's like, is there even somebody on the ballot? And I'm like, yep, it's Robert Vroman.
Yeah,
right? But anyway, my point is like, the necessity or the appearance that every time somebody is trying to do something is that we're never in this like simplistic silo where here's the problem, here's the policy as it pertains to the problem. We always add 2, 3, 4, 5 other check boxes, you know, and there's no competition here. So it's like there's a certain amount of decapitation that occurs in St. Louis city politics.
Well, I think that, as a whole, politics get nationalized way too quickly. Right. And the issues that a lot of these guys are arguing about here in local elections are not shit that is relevant to a municipal office. Like why we're talking about, border or transgender athletes or your stance on Palestine when you're an alderman is kind of ridiculous. Like what we really need to know is, do you have an understanding of how the Department of Refuge works? Do you know the process to apply for a permit to get a building?
Correct.
Do you know what you need? Those are the questions we need to be asking, and we don't ask those, and we unfortunately get these ideologues all the way down the ballot, and it's reflected not only in St. Louis but also rural parts of the state as well, where you've got these insane people running for school board and library commissions.
What
are we doing here?
I'm with you because you hit it on the head. Let's talk about a 2-state solution and free Gaza and all these other things that a lot of local politicians tend to talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, for a small business owner like yourself or myself, if we want to renew our liquor license, you have to go to 3 different floors in the building. You got to get 7 different signatures from 4 different offices. And it's like, can we just fix that first before we solve, a 2,000-year war?
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you what, the one thing I loved the most about the pandemic, and this is what it showed the most, was that like, if you need to get something done in the government, you can do it. Like, for the first time ever, I could apply for all my licenses online.
Yeah, novel idea, right?
It was fucking great.
Yeah,
It was like I could get my liquor license all done online, which let's not talk about liquor license here in the city of St. Louis. That's a fucking mess. But, it is, there are so many other things that we are losing sight on because what we're trying to do in the Democratic Party, and unfortunately what's already happened in the Republican Party, is that we have these litmus tests for how liberal you are, and has nothing to do with if you're actually capable of doing the job. And so what we have is we elect these people who, and I'm not going to say anyone in particular, and don't ask me to. I'll try my best not
I'll name names. You can just nod your head yes or no.
I'm going to do nothing. It's on
and
camera.
it'd be only for those that find the YouTube channel. You're safe.
Okay, good. But, we have these guys that they say, well, you're not 100% on these issues, so therefore you're not a Democrat. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I am 90% of the issues I am with you on.
Well,
except for this one thing, like take for example, like defunding the police. Nobody wants to defund the police, actually. But
the worst slogan they could have ever.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what,
scripted.
As a small business owner and somebody who I worked for Better Together during 10 years ago when Michael Brown was killed and we had our protests. Like, I was on Better Together, working with that and through the whole Ferguson thing when South Grand had the protests and the windows were broken out. I was down there. I was helped clean up glass.
Mokabees was HQ.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But and as a small business owner, I was president of my neighborhood association. I support the police. Everyone, when something happens in the neighborhood and you're going to call somebody, you're going to call the cops.
Yep.
Nobody wants shitty cops. Even cops don't want shitty cops.
No.
Everybody wants to get rid of the bad cops when they want it, and the police officers there now, they want a fair system of how you can do that. Nobody wants shitty cops.
Yeah, it's
but we all want law enforcement. We want good cops. And I think, but let me go back to this real quick. Is that the issue is that for me to say that, I am probably now barred from running from the office ever because I said I am pro-police. However, once you get elected and you start dealing with police officers, a lot of these aldermen start taking very soft positions on where they stand with the police department.
Well, there's a couple of primary candidates that are running for a big seat here in the city in the spring that have said, the primary concern is still to reduce crime, right?
Yeah.
So they say all that, and it's and you, the inability to just simply say, you know what. I believe in talking to and meeting and living with a bunch of police officers in my neighborhoods and via work and calls. Yeah. They're good people. Yeah. But just like every other industry, there are shitheads. Yeah. Right? So can we just kind of like assume that there's generally good intentions? Because otherwise, why would they have taken a job for shit pay if they didn't want to do away with bad guys?
Yeah, in fact, I'll go one further. I don't think they're paid enough.
I agree.
I don't think police firefighters. I don't think they're not. Our public servants are not paid enough. You go from teachers to cops, civil servants work in City Hall. They're not paid enough. Yeah. And that's why you get the caliber of people you get for these jobs. Unfortunately, one would think that you with more training, you can make a better officer. But at the end of the day, if they can't pay their bills, there's that stress animosity. If they've got to go do a double shift in order to make sure that their kids can go to the right school, that they can get everything they need because they're making $35,000, $55,000 a year, it's not right.
No, and then on top of that, it goes back to what we were just talking about, in so much that you have camps of, quote, leadership or political groupings of individuals that it's in their bylaws that you are supposed to disrespect the police because of a blanket assumption,
right?
Via the defund the police movement.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I'm going in there and it's like, you know what, I'm here because I really don't like bad guys and I want to lock them up and I want to protect women that get beat. I want to protect kids that get beat. I want to, like, solve murders. I want to do all this really good stuff. And yet the people that, to a degree, sign my check are going to publicly say that I have no character or that I'm
a racist.
It's like, oh my God, come on.
Well, and that, if anything, the problem with the defund the police message, and actually this is something I think is really important when we talk about the Trump-Harris election here in a couple seconds, but the problem was that the defund the police message came out too fast, because then when they started talking about all the solutions, they were actually talking about funding the police.
Oh, yeah.
Because what they want is they want more social servants or social services people to go out and deal with certain crimes, which they should be. Because cops, when you call the police, you are dealing. It is the worst day of your. It could be the worst day of your life. In most cases, it is. Having a police officer show up to your house is a traumatic event, no matter what, and you're going to remember it to the day you die, and especially if it's for something horrible. And police officers, they show up and they do that 50 times a day. Yeah. And they deal with it all day long. I mean, a lot of those things are things that they shouldn't be dealing with. Like, they don't need to be dealing with domestic disputes or homeless people or public urination or those are things that if we had actual, and I think there is something like this now where they have not civil servants, people who who deal with community service and can help deal with psychological cases and help deal with de-escalation. Like, those people should absolutely be interwoven in the police department for sure. And I think there's something like that going on now. And then when we talk about how the 911 is like, no one's answering 911 because there's no one fucking answering the calls. There's no one working there because they pay shit, of course.
And I think, but this is where a lot of cops publicly, when they make fun of, oh, well, send a social worker to that call, and they belittle the process. Well, come on. You got to give and take a little bit too, because here's some reasonable individuals, and it sounds as if we kind of are on the same page in this.
Yeah.
Like, where I feel empathy towards cops that have meltdowns, for lack of a better term, I view their lives as every single day they go to work, they say goodbye to their girlfriend or wife or kids or whatever, or maybe they look in the mirror and say, see you in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then they go to work, and then they repeatedly see the worst that humankind can provide to a situation, via to the extreme murder or rape or assault or whatever it is.
Finding a dead body, you know, fucking
Exactly.
horrible that is.
How does that not mess with your head?
Yeah.
And so like it's to think that you can go through a 40-hour work week and see that 10, 15, 20 times a week, if not more, and then assume you can go home and just kind of decompress and like unplug and be like, oh, no, it's all rainbows and tulips.
Yeah.
That's not realistic.
Yeah.
So I think this...
Dude, a guy one time threw up in the bathroom at my bar, and I think about that every fucking day. I can't imagine if see a dead body.
We've all been there. Like you on the highway, you see when you see that wreck and you see the body, it never goes away. Now these guys see that 2, 3, 4 times a day.
Yeah.
At a minimum. That's not normal.
Well, and what I would say is that there are services that are available for police officers. But police officers and police unions and associations, they're all kind of filled with the same machismo and sexism and toxic masculinity traits that a lot of other professions are, where like you're not supposed to deal with it. You're supposed to be tough. And that's not what we need. Like we definitely need more services to help, and this is getting tough. I think that what I'm trying to wrap this thing up in a bow in is say, part of the problem that why we got on this thing with the police is that there's probably a lot of viewers who listen to this right now that turned it off because they think we're a bunch of right wingers, but because they're not allowing us to have a conversation about where this needs to go or what the conversations are, how to right the ship, or how to have if we're a big tent, how do we keep the door open for people?
Yeah, and so just for those of you that are listening, here's the deal. The theme, what I'm really attempting to do today, and Martin, I think you might be on board with this, accept the fact that you lost, because in elections, they are binary. So whatever you think you did well or whatever your message was, as it pertains to topics like this, it clearly wasn't good enough, because from a national level, you finished second. And in our world, that's the first place loser. So the attempt here is to, let's be honest with the subject matter or these policy areas and really see, okay, because the common theme that I hear, or that I feel really personally, it's not so much that you have the wrong idea or the wrong policy or the wrong message. What you have is the wrong message going out the door because it didn't resonate.
Well, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I'm going to say that the problem we have is that the other side had way too much messaging going out that we couldn't compete with. And if you ask me, why did the Democrats lose this election? It was because of a massive amount of organized misinformation.
I can tell you this. My first bullet point, because I rarely have notes, but I have notes today a little bit.
God bless you. All right.
Bullet point: 2024 loss. ... Why ? So you beat me to the point. The loss. Sum it up, because there's a lot of things I'm assuming that probably are racking your brain. But give the 30-second version to explaining it to an Australian.
Yeah, I mean, we Democrats in America lost this election because the right wing is way more focused and organized to spread disinformation and has way more people and channels to do it than we do. If you look back, ever since Joe Biden was in office, it's since day one. It is, oh my God, old Joe. He's old. He can't keep his words right. He's an old man. He doesn't know where he's at. He's so disfocused. The economy's garbage. The war in Afghanistan's a mess, and it was just constant negativity out of the gate when this guy is trying to fix a broken economy and a globe that's struggling with a pandemic because the previous guy fucked it up so bad.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really an issue.
Yeah. In fact,
it was a flu.
It was. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't a big deal. We're going to get over it soon. The numbers are great. They're greater than ever been. Meanwhile, he's hosting rallies. He's killing his fucking people showing up to him. It was madness. But so when Joe Biden. One thing that infuriated me the most when he dropped out, it was all of a sudden this conversation about, well, Joe Biden's going to go down as the most consequential president in American history, as one of the greats. He led our country out of this huge depression, and he's going to be remembered as a great president. What the fuck are you talking about? Just 3 weeks ago and 3 years ago, you were dumping on the guy day in, day out for mismanaging and how the economy's in the garbage and how everyone's struggling. But now all of a sudden, now he's out, you're going to praise him.
Well, isn't it possible that both of those things are true?
What things?
Well, what you just described, the belittling him going in pre the decision to exit, simply based upon optics,
Sure.
on audio, on you know, polls don't lie,
Yeah.
until they do.
Yeah. Which
You know,
I think they pretty much do now.
yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yes, and so
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
so all of that was true, right? Because the favorability ratings, you know, were him and Trump were neck and neck at 38% or 40%. So it's like, look, we do not have, we being either party, right? There's no mandate here. Nobody's in love with anybody, but history has taught us all that politics are about change. You know?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's mind blowing about this election is that I don't think if Democrats were to put in anybody else, they would have won. And it's not because of the strength of Trump. I think it's because globally, there was an election, the incumbent party lost after the pandemic. That just happened all over the world. People are massively unhappy with the economy, economics of any other country they live in.
Well, they also, throughout Europe, Argentina in particular, a plethora of other nations, the swing went kind of hand in hand. They used the economy as like, look, this is an obvious pain, but they saw what Trump and the Republicans have done since 15, 16 by making foreigners the true enemy.
Well, dude, I think foreigners have always been the excuse for every country since history.
Right, but we've been around. We've been around politics roughly the same amount of time.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of elections. Yes, it's been on a checklist of subjects.
Yeah.
That have been.
Well, I'm saying because it always works. That's why. That's why they keep going back to that play, because it always works.
But it always lived at number 5, 6, or 7 in the order of things that are okay. What are we really going to focus on this election? Not this time. I mean, it was front and center.
I have an idea about that. Is that I think that so going back real quick to the thing about Biden being an incumbents losing. The thing that blows my mind about Trump that I think revealed this part of the Democratic voter and establishment that we just had way too much faith in the American voter to look at Trump. We did it once before.
No, I agree.
We did it, and we did it in 2020, and now we're doing it again. It's like, how can you look at this guy and give him a pass on this? And the biggest pass he got was that Trump was running as an anti-incumbent in a election dealing with the aftermath of a situation he caused. So Trump was a double incumbent as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree.
He was the guy that all the problems that they were upset about in this election, he's the guy that caused them. But the Republicans are so good at getting out their disinformation that it washed it away. And because of that, immigration was jacked all the way up to the top because you had kids who said,
Well,
and this is actually what fucking kills me the most about this election. You had kids who were voting for the first time, voting for Donald Trump, who were part of the school shooting generation, and that they went to school every day thinking it was their day to get shot at school because it happens so many times. And they voted for the people who haven't done a fucking thing to stop it.
well, I have a theory. We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back.
Has it been 25 minutes?
Dude, we're flying, man.
God damn. Okay.
This might be a 2-hour episode.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here. We were just talking. We were just talking about the school shooting generation and the shift or the apparent interest in MAGA.
Yeah.
On college campuses in particular, right? My simplistic theory on that is this is again another one of the what I view as an obvious failure by the DNC in general. They ignored where these voters lived. They did not do enough effectively, specifically in social media.
Well, that does boggle the mind. Like, how do we have all the people that create every narrative and movie and commercial, all those creative types, they're on our side, except for the shitty actors that go to vote for Donald Trump. It is what it is. But how do we have all of these Hollywood creatives and we can't come up with a narrative or a way to get it out?
I have a theory.
I cannot wait.
They are the elite. When you look at
Okay, I have a theory on that. Go after you.
when you look at the Hollywood A-listers that appear that are not pillow guys or are not Kevin Sorbo or Kirk Cameron, right?
Right.
They are Instagram influencers to the nth degree. There is nobody higher than Taylor.
Sure.
Or than take your pick. Name any of them. And I think that this whole idea of understanding the populist message, when you hear it from somebody that is literally worth $100 million saying, you know, Kamala's for you and she's going to help you. And it's like, well, you don't need the help. You know, like this, there's a certain amount of disingenuous delivery that comes out. And the reason I believe this is because when you look at the turds that were rolled out on the right, from Hulk Hogan to, again, Sorbo and the rest, like nobody takes them seriously, especially 19, 20, 21-year-old young college kids. They don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
Which tells me that they leaned more into the anti-establishment via the Republican messaging than they did listening to their own idols
Well,
on socials say, hey.
It is interesting you say it because that's what they always say about, you know, the Democratic elites and the rich, the limousine liberals. They think they know how to live your life. But then again, you had Elon Musk, who's the richest man in the world, supporting Donald Trump. But his message was, your life is hard. I'm a disruptor. I'm going to shake it up, and we're going to make it better.
But Elon is a goober. He's got a beer belly. I mean,
they're all.
And he makes fun of everybody, and he has a certain amount of diminished presentation.
But he's got the same. He's got the same thing that Donald Trump has, except a lighter version of Trump. I mean, I think the reason why Trump is such Teflon is because he exists in a rare part of American culture where he is a cultural icon, also a politician, in a way that you could run Tom Hanks against him and Tom Hanks would lose because Tom Hanks is a good guy. You think you trust him. But Donald Trump doesn't represent like celebrity. He represents success and money. Even though when you dive into it and you pull back the onion about Donald Trump, you realize the guy actually isn't that successful. Same with Elon Musk. These guys, they're too far ingrained into American culture and they appeal to the things that matter to us the most.
It's so funny because inevitably there were people that are listening to this, some of my friends on the other side of the spectrum, when you just said Donald Trump is not really that successful, and they're going to be like, oh, well, he's a billionaire. What kind of stupid comment is that? Well, the reality is, when he received his first $275 million as a trust fund gift, if he would have just put that money in the S&P 500 fund, right? Yeah. It would be 10, 20, 30 billion dollars. I don't know what the exact.
If he just would have fucked off and not done anything else, he would be a lot wealthier.
And to your point, 6 Chapter 11s, the university, the nonprofits,
the mail order steaks.
Take your pick.
Well, even like Elon Musk, and this is kind of, I think, where I want to try to get to a point where we can talk about this, really pull out the meat of what this is that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, but he's not in liquidity. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't have, I think, maybe even a tenth of the money he's in actual liquid assets.
His money's which would be $25 billion in cash.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. But he. When you look at what wealth is, you know, Elon Musk's money comes from what his valuation of the stocks in Tesla and SpaceX are, and I think and Starlink, I think is another one. And then he also has some investment money in PayPal, which is probably his only like really liquid cash he's got. However, Starlink, Tesla, and SpaceX, the money from that is the government.
Oh yeah,
the U.S. government.
Yeah, no.
So not only is Elon Musk like that's not like
Tesla.
Well, half of Tesla because where Tesla gets its money is from the tax credits because the way that people buy them.
Well, they don't qualify for the tax credit.
They don't. I thought
no. So this is the equity guy in me. I'm I'm a Tesla
interesting.
shareholder.
I heard that they did. Okay.
No, one of the main reasons, and this is theory, that Elon leaned all the way into Trump was a number of years ago, early in the Biden administration, there was a symposium, a conference, a gathering, an EV gathering of auto and charging. Tesla was not invited to this conference, or whatever they want to call it. Ford was there, GM was there, everybody was there. And lithium makers, battery makers, they were all invited. Elon was not. And the reason was the lack of union support. And I'm paraphrasing this, at his plants. And Joe, being, good old Joe, was like, well, I'm pro-union, therefore I'm going to make sure the unions know that I'm not supporting this guy. Big fuck up, Joe. Because you just pissed him off. And look what happened. He spent $180 million of his own money.
Okay, look, we need to talk about how fucking petty these people are, because that is like, so.
But this is where I agree with Elon. If it weren't for Elon and Tesla, you do not have Ford making a Mach-E.
You're right.
They saw the writing on the wall, and there's a reason why the original tree huggers with money in Silicon Valley were buying Teslas like they were candy.
Yeah.
Because it met their personal cultural needs as well as the tech.
What happened to the Prius? Wasn't that like the first electrical car?
I think the Prius was always just kind of a dorky little car.
Yeah.
And it's coming from Toyota, right? Toyota Prius.
Yeah.
And so Toyota was like, you've been around. Okay, I'd rather have your Corolla. It's the little sister of the Corolla. Tesla had a sex appeal to it, had a different logo, it had a body. And it's like, why do we have to, placate the UAW?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, if you invite him, does he lean in the way he does? Because let's be clear, it really wasn't even the money that he put into it. It was X.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's this catch-22. Like, again, can we just zoom out? Maybe the fact that Republicans typically play checkers as they strategize, because they're like, well, that looks obvious. And they're like, duh, okay, I'm making that jump. And the educated DNC class is like, no, this is a chess game. Let's move these pawns over here. Let's go ahead and sacrifice that, i.e. Elon and this conference, because we really need to move our knight over in this area.
Well, and that's kind of, that's a really good point, because Republican messaging is simplistic. Donald Trump's economic policy on his website was, I think, 2 paragraphs, and Kamala Harris's was 4 pages. So it's like, Democrats, and again, this is why we got in trouble, is that we honestly assumed that American voters would look at Donald Trump and make the right decision, but they didn't, because Trump spoke in plain terms, which goes back to why all these millennials voted for Donald Trump, because his message was simpler. I'm going to make you wealthy.
It's a TikTok message.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier. And also there was a lot of peer pressure from the network of podcasters and influencers he had, where it was like, I don't feel like I'm wealthy. Do you? Like, this is all Joe Biden's fault, and because it's an obvious thing that
it
once
was super
you kind of
simple.
peel back the messaging, it evaporates.
Well, and
but we don't think that deep. That's American voters don't think that deep.
Well, the thing is, because it's way cooler to be like, Jesus Christ, this bacon's too expensive. That's their fault. And then if you're the person that's like, no, let me explain why it's expensive, and this is going to make you feel better. Well, no, it doesn't lower the price of the bacon. If I just understand it better, you already lost me, because I want that BLT to have 6 pieces, not 3. Well,
and this goes back to the thing that annoys me the most about this election was that, and Donald Trump's role in it, is the whole thing is so dumb. So we had a candidate or a president who screwed up the pandemic response so badly,
to the tune of 1,500 people a day.
Yes,
dead.
Yeah, and the largest economic downturn since the Great Depression led us in the 4 years that Joe Biden tried to get out of. Joe's main problem was that inflation remained at a high price, because business owners of corporations across the world, guys like Elon Musk and MyPillow and the grocery store folks, all these guys who support Donald Trump, and you can find their data in the FEC, all their financials and who they donate to is all
we know
all
who
there.
they are.
And those guys kept the prices high. And if not for those prices being high around the world, Donald Trump and right-wing leaders across the world would not be flourishing today.
Well, that's a big part of it. But I mean, Democrats also have to own the fact that it's one thing to say that you constantly save the economy following a Republican administration's
Yeah, but for who?
missteps,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And it happened with Reagan and Bush. Clinton came in, fixed it. It happened post-Bush too, with obviously the 2008 explosion in Obama and that administration. Now, whether or not they really fixed it or if it's just natural cyclical nature of markets, because recessions are not new. They are going to come and they are going to occur regularly. But it just seems odd that the ones that our recent memory have fallen under Republican rule. And the thing is, it's not enough to take an Econ 303 course, in order to understand the reality of why those things happen. And here's where I'm going with this. To simplify it down to COVID and supply chains and the Trump administration's complete diabolical handling of the mess, and their spending on top of it, just cutting the checks.
Yeah.
In addition to PPP checks. In exploding the deficit, Joe and crew spent a lot of money. And it's one thing to spend and point to infrastructure or jobs, because I'm a big fan of the infrastructure bill. I'm a bigger fan of the CHIPS Act.
So are a lot of Republicans that voted against it, went to press conferences in their home districts.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. You still have to be honest and address the debt. When you don't admit that part of the inflation that did occur, a percentage of it. It's not. I don't think it's 51%. I don't even think it's 40%. But I do think somewhere in the 25-30% range, the peak inflation was the Biden spending was part of the problem.
See, I don't think American voters give a shit about the debt. I think they care about their own debt and their own pocketbooks. And they don't know how to say, this costs more for me, and that also affects the national debt. I don't think they can put that together.
Totally understand, but I think part of the problem there is the understanding of what the debt really does. What does it do to the psyche? What does it do to the operational reality of Congress in particular? Because if Congress knows that the voting bloc public doesn't really care or understand about the debt, well, then they have no incentive to fix it.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's why Republicans, I find it funny when they're like, oh, we are fiscally conservative. No. Since 1980, since Reagan won,
the worst,
you are responsible for over 65% of the debt since then.
Dude, if you're trying to tell me, not you personally, but if a person's trying to tell me that Republicans are so great at the goddamn economy, why are all the shittiest states in this country all red states? Who the fuck is opening businesses up in Mississippi?
Yeah, versus Massachusetts or California.
Yeah.
Now, here's what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, look at Texas, look at Tennessee. And that's a placebo effect because they have no state income tax. And what they won't talk about in the next paragraph of their story of pitching it is look at our deficits. Look at what is going on with our infrastructure because we have no state income.
Yeah.
And Broadway's popping.
How much money are you getting from the federal government? How much, look here in St. Louis. I think 75 cents of every dollar goes out to rural Missouri. These guys who are fucking attacking us every day, who are voting to deny trans students the right to exist, all because one fucking... Do you know how many trans students tried to play on boys' teams in Missouri?
Less than 10.
One.
Yeah.
One student. And they made the entire campaign about that. Republicans aren't serious leaders.
But I have a note here. Along those lines, I have a note, and this is a compare and contrast. I believe that greed and fear, as tenets within the Republican messaging, is exponentially more effective than hope and facts.
Yeah. It's always easier to point the finger at someone causing your problem because it's easier to get that person to leave and your problem goes away, right? Rather than to look at the root causes of it. I just saw Wicked last night, and that's basically the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Wicked, but
not yet.
The play, but that's basically it. Is that
Well, okay. So let's.
It's actually going to go back to that though, but and I hate to use this analogy because it's so overplayed, but that is the play of saying foreigners are the cause of all of our problems has existed since recorded history, and most recently worked so effectively in Paris back in 2015, 2016 when they had the protests, Syria when Syrian refugees were coming into Greece, Nazi Germany when they blamed the Jews for the fallout of the war. Like foreigners get the heat, but
it's tried and true.
It's tried and true. And what's interesting though, in that I wish all these people who do such deep dives into how vaccines are killing people and how there's microchips inside of them and how fucking aliens are doing shit to us is...
I like chemtrails.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Those are so good. But if they were to look into the fact that Texas, which is a border state, which has all the theatrics of trying to get, the governor down there is trying to say they're being invaded. Did you know that every couple years there is a Republican bill brought up in Texas to do basically the same thing they're trying to do on a federal scale level here, but it's shot down by other House Republicans in committee that would ban foreign workers and illegal immigrants from working in jobs, and they get shot down by Republicans every year because their businesses will be hurt.
Who's going to work the ranches?
Yeah.
Who's going to build those new suburbs?
Again, if Republicans were serious about it, they would do it in their own home states, but they know they're not, and they don't want to solve the problem.
No.
But it's such a great thing to be angry about all the time.
Well, it's again, and we're both alluding to it right now. There's an economic reality of immigration and root cause.
Yeah.
I love that term. Now, the problem is root cause immediately causes people to just glaze over.
You kind of got me.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? But okay, why is immigration important from a population standpoint? Well, root cause, let's back up a little bit. Let's look at our little Jimmies and Jamies and Johnnies, that are good white suburban, middle-class kids. Why are they not having kids?
Right.
Let's see here. Their student loan debt, their inability to buy a house. They're never going to come up with 20% down to buy that median $350,000 house, which is the average cost these days. Bacon is too expensive. There's just a plethora of reasons. Healthcare, they can't afford the premiums, let alone add a wife, a spouse, and 2 kids and a dog.
All these guys are attacking these people for being fiscally responsible and not bringing a child in the world because they know it's going to be really fucking hard to raise them. But then they say, Elon Musk is out there saying just pump them out.
So the younger generation is literally via their actions telling the ruling class, here's why we are not having kids.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But if you want to have a GDP that's growing, you have 2 choices. Either you grow your population and you increase total production, or you have to cut expenses and increase your margin, which means, for those of you that don't understand what that means from an economic perspective, you're firing people. You're bringing in technology to replace so that you can be more productive.
I mean, don't you think, though, that... what was I going to go on that? I think that
Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah. I had a really great point, then I forgot it right in the middle. That I hate when that happens, but the thing that I think we really are forgetting, we're kind of getting what is it called? Getting the forest for the trees. You're not seeing the forest for the trees. Is that immigration is great? Illegal immigration is great because we can pay people below minimum wage, legally what we're allowed to pay them. And so we're kind of losing the human rights argument of saying that we have to pay our own citizens a living wage. We can pay these other people who are not legal whatever the fuck we want, and we don't really care what happens to them.
And keep their Social Security taxes.
And then the conversation should be to say, okay, why are we paying our people what they're being paid? And who are the people who are making the most money?
Oh, totally.
And what can we do to help make sure that they're being equitable in what they are getting, what they are making?
Yep.
And so it's going all the way down this line where it kind of sounds like to me that the argument we're making for illegal immigration to keep it is that we need a slave labor force in America.
Well, Mark Cuban, he was a parrot for the Democratic Party all through the fall.
Yeah.
He truly believed in it. I'm a huge Cuban fan,
Yeah.
full transparency. He made it clear. He's like, look, the corporate class, the business class, specifically manufacturing and high labor intensive industries, to be clear, they are not in favor of mass deportation. They are not in favor of clamping down on this. And that's the economic reality of so many industries that can't find people. All these help wanted signs, and well, at some point, it's because our generation of kids that are 18 to 35, they look at these jobs and they're like, "Fuck no, I'm not doing that." And so now, all of that being said, and I kind of pushed back a little bit earlier about the deficit and inflation and how the Biden administration in particular has to take some ownership given the amount of spending that occurred over the first 24 months. Immigration, same issue. For Democrats to avoid accepting the reality of video, of proof of the flood that was chaos. Mm-hmm. There's one way to describe it: chaos. Fix that.
Well, yeah, but that was for a short period of time. It wasn't prolonged. The Republicans are making it seem like there's a constant invading army. In fact, there was a really awesome video I saw where they interviewed a National Guardsman. He was like, "It's pretty quiet down here. I don't really see why we're here."
Again, bar charts and graphs and actual statistics are not sexy.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to the whole binary reality of an election, right? And how you message that. For us to say, or to take the National Guard rep's word, who is a definitive expert on the subject matter, who says it's not that bad. Our numbers are lower than they were at this time in 2020.
The borders seem to be doing her job.
Yeah, right. So all that, it doesn't matter because the mistake had occurred and nobody owned it.
Well, and not only that, but like our message was way more complex than theirs was. Like theirs was the Republicans are very good at having a very tight.
They're killing your kids and they're taking your jobs.
Exactly right. It's all
and eating your dogs.
Yeah,
right?
there's
Dog
one. Yeah, right. Never mind the fact that most gun deaths happen like in I think rural communities by white families
per capita
that know their own, like they know their killer, like domestic abuse.
Yeah, and again, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be some haters. They're going to be like, "No, what about Southside Chicago? That's not what that is." By pure numbers, they are right. The volume is higher. But when you look at percentage chances, because we all play the lotto, right? We all know what the odds are.
Yeah.
So if you are in a rural area with that type of a demo, by percentages, that is more dangerous than living on the south side of Chicago.
Right. Well, and also like we live in
But that little explanation, that's not sexy.
No, it's not.
It's actually pretty awful.
So that actually I think is speaking of unsexy messages, one of the things that we lost, the biggest reason we lost, was the economic issue in the 2024 election. And there's something fundamentally wrong with how we do capitalism in America because, like, I'm not sure how we can ever have the based on the what we know about capitalism or how we support it in America. I'm trying to talk this through as I'm thinking about it, but we do have an equity problem with who's doing the work versus how much they get paid for it. But we can never seem to have this conversation where it says, yeah, but once you've made enough, do you need more? And we never can have that conversation because the fact of the matter is that we were built on this system where the main goal of capitalism is to always get more year after year. We have to see our profit dividends grow. We got to get more. Never mind the fact that as like a regular person, if I were to make $1 million this year, $1 million next year, $1 million the year after that, I'd be doing pretty great. Like,
right.
I don't really need anything more than that. But if the system is built on, well, we have to continue to grow, and then you have to continue to prove that you are worthy of growing with us.
Well, yeah.
And then we have this slave labor force below us that we pay nothing.
Well, I think so. I have a theory. I have actually a suggestion.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of means testing. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is. Like, look, you want to make more, prove you can do more. right? Simplistically speaking. And along those lines, like what you're describing is the worker class being left behind. I look at a Microsoft, I look at an Apple, I look at most recently NVIDIA in particular. I read an article a little while ago, Jensen Huang and everything that they're doing at NVIDIA, that it's now the third most valuable company in the world.
Wasn't there a story about how they were like going broke and then all of a sudden now they're like super valuable again? Like I don't know how an economy works. Like
they're running the gamut. But here was the aha moment for me was like the number of millionaires that they had made just by being part of the process was somewhere in the range of like 2,500 employees that due to the run and due to their comp packages that are now to a degree, fuck you rich.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, okay, I get that. Now on the top end, how do we manage his tax liability? How do we make sure that NVIDIA isn't Amazon paying a 2% effective tax rate, right?
Right.
Well, how about this? If you want that 2% effective tax rate, prove to me that every single year you're adding 5% more employees. The average pay is going up 8% a year. The benefits packages are increasing in value by 10% a year. I don't care what it is. If we as a country, as a government, like start to look at tax code as it pertains to business development in a quid pro quo manner, now we're speaking the language that everybody at the table understands. Instead of like arbitrarily saying, well, I want to go from 32% corporate tax rate to 29%. Well, what does that 3% really mean to the businesses? And vice versa. Well, under FDR, we were at 64%. Why can't we go there? Because billionaires can afford it. Well, what does 64% really mean if we don't care about the deficit? If we don't care about, debt and servicing our bills, right? We do this in normal everyday. Every company that is a publicly traded company, even your small business, a comic book shop, and Gaslight Studio back in the day, like we look for ways to incentivize employees that are outside the realm of I'm going to pay you this much per hour.
Right.
You sell these comics.
Yeah.
Why can we not do that at the top level?
100%. Yeah, I do not know why. I mean,
Well, then why are you here?
I mean, the reason why is because that we lack the willpower to ask them because we think that it's going to affect us someday.
I agree.
We think we're going to be millionaires and billionaires someday, and we don't want it to affect us.
It's a good point to break. We're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
We're going to talk about self-interest.
Oh, yeah.
And what you vote for.
Okay.
And why.
Yeah.
1 second. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. This is kind of a non sequitur what we were just talking about, but
Pull that little.
oh, sorry.
There you go.
So to kind of wrap up what we were talking about before, I think that this economic message that we lost on mostly was derived from low information voters, people who have very small, narrow, single issues they're interested in, not really understanding the effect of that. And I just think that it's maybe we're kind of at this point in America where we're going to start looking at how much money we actually need. Like, I don't know if that's even possible. Not as like Americans, but as like, just to be happy.
Yeah, I think, well, this is where, before we got started, I kind of like alluded to my own personal dissected philosophy from a capitalist / money standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think going down the road of trying to define what is enough. I don't think that's healthy from a macro perspective. And because I think it's human nature to want more, to challenge more.
Yeah.
Even if you're happy, because a lot of entrepreneurs that I know that are really, really wealthy, that have built businesses and or are running their business or whatever it is, that get to the point where they can, mail it in, call it a day. It's not in their DNA. They have to do things. They have to be.
And society needs people like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that if we arbitrarily establish a enough is enough line, It's kind of counter to the whole drive.
What if we were to give them a trophy that says if they got $100 billion, like you won capitalism, here you go? Do you think that would like start putting like in their heads to say,
I think we should.
oh, I just like
Well, I mean, we
little stickers, some
you know,
stickers?
maybe contract Elon and say, hey, look, pick solar systems, and please, as your peers hit 100 billion, let's donate a solar system to them. You know, and then they're off to the races.
You know, I think as you were talking about reflecting as a, I think we're kind of the same age, and I think that in your early 20s, when you come out of high school, you're trying to establish your identity. You're trying to say that you're making it, and you've done something, and you're necessary, right, to the things around you. You're important, and the more you go in life. So you spend 20 years, this is sort of what happened for me, is in your 20 years, you have successes, you have losses, you have all these things you've done trying to attain this American success.
Sure.
And then when you get to our age, you realize what you're really losing is time.
Oh, time, yeah.
And you are concerned about how you're spending it. And you start thinking about what is most valuable to you. And what it's not most valuable to, it's things are like, it's experiences. It's things where, you know, it's the moment you share with your wife, your daughter, your friends, and it's not necessarily about these humongous things you have or the comfort that money brings you. And I won't deny, like, having money and no bills is pretty fucking great.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's nothing that can be done with that. And once you've been able to pay off your debt and you have no more debt, and you know that there's a problem in life that you can just solve by writing a check, is pretty great.
I think what you're describing is the simplistic cognitive dissonance that the DNC exhibited, is that what you just described, the simplistic reality of not having debt and being able to just be, right?
Yeah.
So that's not weighing on you.
Yeah.
The vast majority of Americans don't have that.
Right. Because the system is built to pack it into them.
And I think that the Republican messaging...
Pack debt into them, sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I think the Republican messaging and the way that they approached kind of their populist messaging in particular as it pertained to economy, good, bad, indifferent, lies, or otherwise, what they did is they struck that chord. They tied almost everything to that simple reality of you are struggling. Whether it's, here's these scary brown people coming across the border taking your job, which means you have less money. We already know you have less money. We know that's your pain point. Or it's Nancy Pelosi's making all these stock trades. You need to get them out. That's a deep state. They're all in bed together, and they're making all the money, and you're not. It's the same pain point. You know?
Well, the thing I'd argue with that is I'd say that they did make that case, but it wasn't clearly made because voters are more simplistic than we want to give them credit for.
Yes. So therefore, out of the two arguments that were made, with the intent of being procure the population that is all struggling and poor, the Republican messaging was basically putting a nightcrawler on a hook in a bluegill pond, and the Democrats were like, no.
Dude, that's the most Midwestern shit I've ever heard in my entire life.
Let's put a jig bait on this thing, and let's see if we can pull them in. I mean, they made it too difficult to understand.
No, you're right, and like we did. Trump is a threat to democracy, and hope we delete this before he becomes president. I don't end up in a camp because I said that, but Trump was a threat to democracy. Trump was wildly unqualified. He is massively incompetent. His people who follow him do not have the best intentions for Americans, and we made that case. However, their message is always more simpler than ours. It's always more simple than ours, and that's where they always win because, by and large, like you pointed out, Republicans are not fiscally conservative at all. They're wildly the massive spenders. They don't know how to keep a checkbook clear.
On paper, they are exponentially worse for the economy from both a macro and a micro perspective.
Right.
The only thing that I can lean into from a Republican kind of foundational policy, and that is try to reduce regulations, try to streamline government. Now, that doesn't mean take all the guardrails off and allow jarts to come back so little kids can pierce their skulls or what. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, though, is we don't need 7 rules to support the 8th rule that is the best one, right? Let's make this simpler.
Yeah, and I think that's also where RFK and a lot of Trump supporters came in, is that they made us the defenders of the status quo. That wasn't helping anyone life out. But so what RFK and even Donald Trump during his first term, the one thing he did do that I really appreciated was that he assigned a law that patients of terminally ill diseases could take non-FDA qualified medicines. They were still experimental. And his point was like, look, if you're dying, you should be able to take what's the worst that's going to happen? That's a great idea.
Your body, your choice.
Yeah, basically. And with
oh, the irony.
Yeah, but when RFK and what he's going to do to the FDA and to making sure that our health is fucking wacky. Some of the stuff that he is arguing, there's a kernel of truth to it. Like there are some things some regulations that need to go away, some dyes that really shouldn't be.
Processed food, colors. Yeah. Oh, you mean all those things that the rest of the world, developed world, already does?
Yeah, and things that in the past, hippie liberals have tried to get rid of in the past, but they got shot down by guess who? Fucking Republicans.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally circumvention. They're circumventing the narrative, is what.
Right, and they're circumventing the narrative, but also there is, we've got to be really careful that we are not seeming like we are defending the system that is harmful to most Americans, or not to most Americans, but they feel it's harmful, and we've got to be as revolutionary interactions as they are in their language.
Well, I love on the healthcare side where you have an RFK coming in, and and some of the talking points lean into the area of trying to create transparency. Let's eliminate the quote deep state within healthcare and drugs and all this stuff. Well, guess what? The easiest way to do that is actually create universal healthcare. Yeah, because now you take the profit motive out. Yeah. All deep state, at the end of the day, if we're going to go back to the quote root cause. Mm-hmm. Who's making the money?
Dude, I mean, Republicans are so good at gaslighting. It's mind-blowing. Like, if there is, I think, what was it called? It's called admission by accusation. Like, if they basically are telling you that someone else is doing it, they're the ones doing it. Like, there's...
Totally.
I mean, come on.
But, okay, so I don't want to make this a blue team love fest here, because I do think the blue team needs a nice little fucking kick in the ass. I want to get your take on all the acronyms, the checkbox world that we live in when it comes to laying out your policy, your politics, etc. From woke, DEI, BLM, LGBTQ, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things that are almost exclusively culturally based. And
because of messaging,
yeah. So what I want to do is kind of get your take on what's too much. Let's just fundamentally agree, and I'm just put it out there, but I will play devil's advocate for the sake of the conversation. Sure. Let's fundamentally agree that all those things within a spectrum are positive influences and or guides to create a better community, a better business, a better, whatever the better situation is.
Yeah.
However, from an election perspective, being that we live in a 2-party binary world.
Yeah.
Those areas were fodder. It was literally TNT powder for the Republican messaging machine. Mm-hmm. How do you manage that? How do you manage a subject such as DEI in a world where all the messaging is telling us that these, self-loathing middle-class white guys in suburban America who are undereducated and don't have the technical degrees and are stagnant in their lives and lifestyles and their pocketbooks, it's so easy to toss DEI out there and make them fired up. Well, how do you manage that? You see what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, and kind of to lay on top of that. So all of these acronyms are just another talking point of similar to illegal immigration. Like it's a thing where you can point to something that is the reason why you are the way you are, and it's not good, right?
It's different. It's different than
yeah.
quote norm.
And what I would say is to our allies in the liberal side of the aisle is that I think where a lot of these arguments come down to, because we are an ally. However, there's a generational gap that exists between the millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, and everyone else. That like it's overlap. We're growing up in the same time, but there's a little bit of overlap where you've got your old ideas, I've got mine, and I think that the problem is that we're not giving enough grace to people who grew up one way, and we are automatically demonizing them out of the gate for not understanding completely at the jump where people are coming from. And I think it's a part of that is because definitely the education system in this country sucks, but we've kind of forgotten to which, I don't know if anyone really ever did learn this, but the Socratic method of how you reason is you receive new information, you reflect upon it, then you have to defend it. And we have the reflection part is a little bit broken because that's replaced with anger, I think. And then the defense part is some people on the right just make up their own facts. So you really don't need correct information to debate your side. You can create your own.
Yeah, isn't it a little hypocritical? Like if we zoom out and take a scenario where you have a conservative individual that has grown up in a Baptist community or an evangelical community who just simply doesn't get it and is a homophobe, right? And so many on the left will look at that individual and be like, you are the problem, right? I don't think them believing that or feeling that is necessarily the problem. Where I view the problem is whenever they try to implement policy or create standards or create rules that physically take away the ability for a gay couple or otherwise to live their lives. So, like, is it not enough to just be like, okay, look, at some point the left has to look at that individual and maybe say, while I'm a human that has particular feelings different than what you believe in, I get why you feel that way. And then you're not going to convert them.
Yeah.
This constant attempt to change their beliefs it's Newton's third law.
I think that there's kind of two things at play here. One is that because there's so much information out there, and then we can find any opinion we want to back up what we're feeling, that gives anybody the ability to never be wrong. And so the fact that like Republicans, Democrats can't even agree on what is true facts is pretty unbelievable. And it's hard to come to a point of agreement on anything in this day and age. But also this lack of people being able to look beyond their self and see that, well, maybe this is something that applies everywhere. Take, for example, there's a community in southwest Missouri. There's a Tyson meat packing plant. Rural Missouri, small town America, voted 80% for Trump, I think. They have a problem right now because the Tyson plant just left. And the majority of their population there is from 32 different countries, mostly Sudanese, mostly Hispanic.
They work in the chicken farms.
They work in the chicken farms, but now they're all left with like no jobs. So this Republican community down there, you would expect that based on what we know about Republicans or our idea of what Republicans are, that they would be throwing them out in the streets and, exiling them and calling the cops and having
NIMBYs
deported. Yeah. But in fact, the the city recognizes that these are good people. They do food drives. They celebrate their holidays. They want them to feel welcome. They recognize that they are not harmful to the community. In fact, they're a benefit to the community. But it stops there at their own front doorstep, and they can't expand that out to elsewhere in the world because I think where it is, especially like there was a really great story that the Daily Show did about 10 years ago probably longer than that, about this was back when the gay marriage issue was really hot. And there was a small West Virginia town, very rural, and they elected their first gay mayor in a town that voted for like overwhelmingly for George W. Bush last in 2008 or 2000, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
And Republican county, through and through. But they have a gay mayor, they have a pride festival and all this stuff. And even though like most people like are opposed to gay marriage, but it's that they all have their gay guy. I know he's a good one.
Yeah.
And I know he's my gay and he is my gay guy. I'm going to support him. But the other guys, no way. And so there's that kind of that idea of like the foreigner aspect of like, I know what's in front of me, but anything beyond that, I can't comprehend it.
It goes back to my early compare contrast. It's greed and fear, right? Well, the first part of that is greed. The community in Missouri that you're describing, the reason why a lot of those people down there, and I don't even know the exact details, but my gut and my experience tells me they have work that needs to be done that people will not do.
Yeah.
Whether it's unloading a meat truck or stripping a roof or whatever it is, right?
Well, and I'll say 60 years ago, Americans did do those jobs.
Yeah.
And so something happened where in American capitalism, we said those are not white people jobs.
It's wealth gap.
Oh, you think? Well, yeah.
Because back whenever Americans were doing a lot of those jobs, you had maybe a 25 to 30x ratio between the median pay of the average worker and the CEO.
Do you think if we had more Americans applying for those jobs, the salary would go up? Similar to what happened to McDonald's, where they couldn't find employees, they had to hire local.
I don't think so.
Salary?
I don't think so, and I think the reason is because today the wealth gap is roughly 250x, where
Right,
you had the
yeah.
average CEO comp. And at the end of the day, the ruling class, their number one job is not to grow their business. It is not to improve morale or any of those things. It's to maintain their margins.
Right. Well, and that's what you saw, what was it, 2021 when they had all those corporate layoffs from like big companies like Google and PayPal. It's not that like they were running out of money. It's that they had nowhere else to grow. And so they needed to make profits. So when they could do that is to make internal cuts.
Right. And they're publicly traded companies. And Wall Street, you know what Wall Street loves? A good old fashioned house cleaning.
Yeah.
Because that means you're reducing your overhead.
Right.
And you see 9 times out of 10 bumps in the stock price every time somebody reorganizes.
Yeah.
Boeing is going through it right now.
I think going back to the kind of the DI and all the acronyms things, I think that it's important to remember that at the end of the day, any DEI hire, any LGBTQIA hire, any trans hire, any immigrant hire, or anything other an acronym you got for these for people who are being used as a bludgeon for the electorate. At the end of the day, all those people want the same thing everyone else does. They all want to come home. They want to watch TV. They want to have dinner with their loved ones. They want to make sure there's money to go to save. They're all kind of the same economic issues, and I think.
It is kind of funny, though, that 2 cis middle-class white guys are figuring out the DEI issue.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say I'm trying to figure it out.
No.
I just think that like there are so many fights that I think Democrats took for advantage this last year because we had too much faith in the American voter to do the right thing with Donald Trump. And I think that we have to change our tactics for the next couple of years because they clearly have something we don't have. They've got a disinformation network that goes far and wide. They've been using for the last 40 years. We got to build something similar, but with real information. And it has to be poppier and better and just as good as theirs. Because there's no fucking way that a villain like Donald Trump, who we've been watching movies about guys like this for years, how in the hell he wins is beyond me.
It's so funny because I have some acquaintances that voted that way that immediately, post-election in many conversations, text strings, et cetera, were like, well, I'm not MAGA. And it's like, oh, fuck. You don't even get it.
Yeah.
Like how are you not understanding this? Two things I want to touch on before you get back to your real world life. Number one is I'm really curious your take on freedom and liberty as tenets. Because when I think of freedom in particular, let's just stick with freedom, forget liberty. Most people would have to Google that. Freedom, do what you want, live where you want, live your life the way you want, all these things, to the point where, for example, here in Missouri, we often put, quote, liberal subjects or items on ballot initiatives, and we allow the people of Missouri to have the freedom to vote and choose whether or not we want weed or sports gambling or abortion or expanded Medicare, all these things. And historically, the Republicans, through their own message for generations, have been the party of freedom. Personal liberty, right? You can do what you want. Don't let the government in your life, et cetera, et cetera. And fast forward to 2024, and it was really a freight train that started in 2016. What's your take on this shift in the Republicans' view of the government's role in personal lives versus the Democrats, to a degree, starting to pick up that argument, saying that we are the party that is more in favor of your freedom to do what you want?
I think that it mostly says more about the Republicans being a contradictory party to what they actually are. And the reason why they keep winning is because they say the things they know Americans want to hear, and they do the exact opposite of it. I mean, they are kings of gaslighting. But I think that when you look at the facts, it's clear that the Democratic Party is more in line with protecting democracy and defending our allies. And, when Donald Trump says, these guys the Democrats are war hawks, like, the fuck are you talking about? Democrats are war hawks? Like, no, Democrats are about supporting their allies and making sure, supporting their allies and making sure that democracy is preserved, like, globally. What is, maybe not locally, but it is. What's incredible to me is that, and I think the reason why it works is because Republicans just have more of their people saying it than we do.
Yeah,
and it just reinforced the message more than anything else.
Yeah, it blows my mind. Shifting, last thing, the last few elections. Really, I want 2016, 2020, and 2024. The way I view them is, I think in 2016, the Democrats lost because of their own actions and or inactions. In 2020, I think the Democrats won, not because of what they did, but because of the landscape as it was presented, and the Republicans really just shit the bed that bad. And in 2024, again, I will say, I believe that it was less Republican strategy or quote, good stuff, and more an ineffective national message in how to run this election. Even though, look, give Kamala plenty of leeway here because she had such a truncated runway, shorter period of time than anybody's ever had to run for the position. But everybody's calling now for, you got to fire them all. You got to look at the board. You got to go to the top. You got to get rid of them because it's not working. My question to you is, who do you see as the future of the party? I'll help you out here.
I mean, look.
From a candidate standpoint,
Yeah.
let me just toss some names out.
Yeah.
Colin Allred, Pete Buttigieg, Andy Beshear, I even Newsom out west. And then from behind the curtain standpoint, some of the names that are on the table right now, again, Rahm Emanuel, Ben Winkler, who's the Wisconsin Democratic chair. You have all these Democratic chairs that are putting their name in the ring, and then you have a guy like Chuck Rocha, right? The cowboy hat that's on CNN.
Oh, yeah.
What do you view? Who do you view as? Because there needs to be one. Because the Republican Party's proven you need an idol. You need a figurehead that can just carry the message.
Well, look,
because MAGA doesn't work without Trump.
Look, I think that here we are in November of 2024. I think it's very naive to start thinking about that we're even going to have an election in 2028. I hate to say it, but like, I really want to,
Well,
let's get to the next couple of years.
Let's be positive and be
Sure,
and be problem solvers.
Sure.
But if we've got the keys to the car, who's driving?
Unfortunately, I think that we get, it's been proven twice, but I don't think America will elect a woman. I think we're too sexist for it, unfortunately. Because I think AOC and I think Gretchen Whitmer would be two amazing leaders. Mm-hmm. AOC probably better than anybody because she can explain things in a way that is clear, makes common sense. She represents the future.
I believe that the first time a woman gets elected, it'll be a Republican woman.
I think so too.
Nikki Haley would have won this race by 6 points.
Yeah. But I think that the problem is that we're not going to have a leader we're not going to have a chance to win these elections until we wake the fuck up and realize that the playing field is uneven. I mean, the things that Donald Trump and Republicans can get away with that Democrats can't is unbelievable. I mean,
but we don't try.
We don't try to fight back against it because we try to be too smart.
Well, isn't it the proverbial you're bringing a knife to a gunfight?
We're bringing a knife.
We're bringing a spork to a gunfight.
We're bringing a spork to a tank fight.
Yeah.
Because the Republicans they're way more organized. They've got the press is way more terrified of them. They've got comedians and podcasts and simple messaging that works for them. I mean, there were things where Kamala Harris, I can't think of an example right now, but she would say something. It would be on the press for 4 days.
I can't think of anything I would do different.
Well, even like that, but it's okay. Bad talking point, but really, what would you do different? I mean, booming economy, you've got to pull us out of the pandemic.
Again, I think it's as simple as what? There were definitely some issues at the border, and here's what I would do different, and here's why I would force Congress to do it.
But the border numbers were down, though. See,
totally understand, but
we got to get you right. It's messaging.
Admit it.
It's messaging.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it has to be true.
That's the thing that I think we got to focus on is that
when
people say that starting now, I think that people say, well, Fox and MSNBC are all the same. They're not. Fox and MSNBC have similar presentations of how they present the news, but Fox fucking doesn't give a shit about what they say. Democrats do, right? So we have to hold the truth, and they can say whatever they want. And so that's the problem that we've got in our media.
Yeah, it's ad sales to pay for the Dominion.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but I think that until we can figure out a way to level the playing field, it's going to be a lot harder.
So I think that we agreed to disagree, yet agree full circle on too soon for a woman. I don't think it is. I think it needs to be the right woman, and I do believe it'll be a Republican woman.
If we can nominate two women on both sides, we'll get a woman president.
Yeah, right. The other spectrum question would be: is it too soon for a gay person, i.e., Pete Buttigieg, to win the biggest title?
Oh well.
Because is he not he's the smartest dude in the room 99 out of 100 times.
I think during the campaign, if they put Pete Buttigieg in a room, he would turn voters to Kamala's side. There was a really good, I forget what it was called. There's some YouTube series they do debates and they take undecided voters and then they present somebody in this case was Pete, and they had a room of 20 undecided voters. And 15 of them decided to vote for Kamala, and then one of them decided to vote for Jill Stein, and the other was for Trump. Smart guy, incredibly smart. I am concerned, though, based on the information about Pete could have the best plan. He could do everything Kamala did, and he wouldn't win because there's that Republican machismo about masculinity that they wouldn't vote for, which I think I kind of hope she chose him as VP this time. I think that would have been a killer ticket. Wouldn't have won, but I think it would have been a killer ticket. Yeah. I don't think there's anything we could have done to win this election. We have to cheat. We have to start what we're doing right.
Why can't we cheat? Just cheat too.
Let's do it. I'm all for it. I think that right now we got to start what you're doing here.
Well, to be clear to all you conspiracy theorists that are listening, look, I'm not saying J6 cheat. I'm not saying deny the reality cheat. I'm saying cheat in your messaging.
Yes.
Lie.
Yeah.
No, hon, you look great in that dress.
My wife does look good in that dress.
but that was a hypothetical.
Yeah. No, I'm all for you. I think that here I am. I'm coming out of retiring from the comic book business and middle-aged guy and trying to figure out what I want to do. And I'm like, oh man, what is useful? What is needed? And doing stuff like this, where getting the message out, where we build comfortable space for people to agree with us. and that we're all kind of on the same message is what's needed, because that's what they do over there.
Yeah, here, like, okay.
And I'm not saying this is a liberal podcast. I'm just saying, like, we're just kind of common sense people who give a shit about people around us.
This is a poke the bear podcast more than anything. The messaging in my world, in my opinion, is like, look, here's the deal. We're gonna make you more financially stable. We're gonna make sure you're healthy. We'll make sure you don't go bankrupt when you do get cancer, because you're going to get cancer at some point.
Yeah.
You or your spouse or otherwise. We're gonna do all those things, and at the same time, we're gonna find a way to create a nice little wall that if you want to be a homophobe or if you want to be a racist, you can be that person, but there are limitations as to how that you express it or act on it.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, we're going to make sure that we understand that this is a global environment that we live in. Therefore, the shit that is in your TV or your cell phone, on the wall, and all of your food and all this other shit, we're going to play nice with the rest of the world because we are consumers. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, if we do play nice, they're probably less inclined to invade other nations because we're fucking them over by keeping all the toys and going home.
Yeah, I think that if my closing message would be, Democrats we're going to look at the country like it's a business, and our product is people, and we're going to have the best people that we can export all around the world, which means they're going to be the healthiest, the smartest, most financially stable.
Yeah.
They're going to be the most free of crime and misery and disease. And we invest in people, and we need tax dollars to do that, and we need to make sure we have good policies to do it. But the American product is this thing called a free American, or whatever the hell it is. And that is what we're selling you this year.
You got to get it down to a 4-letter acronym.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to fit on a hat for fat heads.
Well, I think, look, if we're a capitalist society, let's talk about it. Let's make the best human product possible. And I would compare a Californian next to a Mississippian any day. I hate to shit on Mississippi, but stats are stats.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Mississippi, I mean, it took Leonard Skinner down. I will always hate that state.
What happened in Mississippi?
The plane went down in Mississippi.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I blame them.
Sorry.
It's all good, man. Well, now that we solved world problems, time to get back to our real lives.
Yeah. Thanks.
Martin Casas.
Casas.
Man.
Mi casa.
I'm really bad at that.
It's a hard one to do.
I was just going to say Martin, but I wanted to be cool and try and add the last name into so that it matched up to the
you
dashboard.
Want to edit it right now?
Martin Casas. Casas.
One more time.
Martin Casas, thanks for joining me, man.
I love to be here.
Catch you. We'll do this again. Actually,
I got some other stuff I'd like to talk about.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
You
Catch
too.
you next time.
Thanks.